Hello, friend. Thank you so much for tuning in this week to the Inventory Genius podcast. I am so glad you're here. We're going to be talking about all things inventory, cash flow, and profit strategy because what is the point of making money if you never get to keep any of it? Just a reminder, if you have not already, make sure to get my new book, Profit Genius, which is now out and available on Amazon. And now to today's episode. Hey, listeners, I am thrilled that you are here today on the Inventory Genius podcast, listening and learning. I have a special episode for you today, and we're going to start to do this quite frequently because there's nothing that gets me more excited than helping entrepreneurs succeed, coaching them through their financial problems and helping them create financial strategy. So today you're going to listen to two call-in coaching guests. Both of these women have small businesses and they had financial questions for me. So I set up a time where they could call in and ask their questions. You are going to hear me coach them live on air. And I think what you're going to hear is going to give you some bite-sized actionable steps that you can take and implement in your business today. Enjoy the show. Hey there, welcome to the Inventory Genius podcast. I'm so excited to be doing our coaching call-in questions today. And I have Kirsten on the line. I'm really excited. So tell me, how can I help you? What's on your mind today?
So I am a sole esthetician. I do have a storefront. I do have a retail and a small boutique area. My question is mainly, I live in Florida. I live in a beach town in Florida. So half the year, my business doubles, and then the other half the year, the summer, I lose almost half of my clientele because they're snowbirds. So they go home for the summer. So my question was really about how do I bulletproof my business so that I'm not struggling every summer? And it's like, yeah, I can understand like savings and stuff like that. But I guess I'm looking for some sound advice of kind of how to really survive those summers and instead of playing catch up when the getting's good, to
Yes.
actually be able to profit, instead of
Yeah.
catching up.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about some of the numbers, and then I have some ideas on how I would help. So first, do we have debt that we're tackling in your business?
Yes. I was operating on my own, and in 2022 I decided to close everything down and take off and travel for a year. And then I came back and I reopened in one location and I hated it. So then I moved back to my former plaza that I'd previously been in years prior and reopened. So there's that. It's a big expense to open two different locations.
Yes.
So yes, I'm waiting on my official P&L. I have a bookkeeper who's catching up on 8 months of finances.
Okay.
So then I know the actual numbers that I'm looking at, but yes, there is definitely that.
Okay. And then in that slow season, how much does your business drop? Does it drop by half? Does it
I would
barely?
say close to half. I'd say at least 40% for
Okay,
sure.
so I'm going to show you here. We'll put this on YouTube too. So for those of you that are watching, you'll be able to see this. For those of you that are just listening, you'll have to grab a pen and paint, pencil and a piece of paper. You can follow along. So what would do is I would build out a budget similar to this. So this is the framework I use for every single client, whether they're multi-million or they're literally startups. I use it in my business as well. So I would use this for you. And the first thing I would do is just put together a list of what your actual fixed and non-fixed expenses are every single month, so that you can see what your break even is for operating your business. So we're just going to punch in a couple numbers here, just random numbers, so that we can kind of see some auto tallying. So, fixed and non-fixed are going to be like the rent, the insurance, the things that it doesn't matter if you have customers or you don't have customers, that has to get paid. So that would be your fixed expenses. And then non-fixed expenses would be things like marketing, payroll, things where you travel, where you do have the opportunity to say, I'm going to spend or I'm not going to spend. So we want to figure out your fixed and your non-fixed expenses and then bring them across for the entire year. So maybe in January, it's a little bit slower, or it's a little bit
heavier business because everyone's coming to Florida for the winter. And so you're able to do some of your advertising and marketing. So maybe we have some expenses in those months. But then when we get to those summer months where, everybody is back in their own hometown, maybe we leave out some of those non-fixed expenses and we just go through and we say, okay, we still have rent no matter what. We still have, payroll no matter what. We still have to pay for a bookkeeper, whatever. So you would fill those all out all the way across to see what your minimal operating expense is going to run every single month. And then from there, you would set your sales goal so that you have enough extra profitability after paying the debt at the end of the good months to save for those slow months. So for example, and I'm going to pull it from over here so I don't mess up my spreadsheet. So let's say in the month of January, we can pull in $50,000 in revenue. We know that our margin is 50%. That just makes it easy for me to calculate for you. So that leaves us with a gross profit of $25,000 to use for the rest of the month, to pay our fixed and non-fixed. Then we put in all of our expenses, whatever those would be, and we tally those up. So we'll put in one more here. So that shows us that at the end of the month, we have $6,300 in fixed and non-fixed expenses for the month, which would leave us with $18,000 in profit. So again, we're first going to say, okay, for the month of January, what does it cost to operate the business? I can do a little bit, of those extra things, the marketing, the travel, those extra expenses, coffee for the team, whatever, in January because my sales are higher. I'm going to put in what my typical sales would be with my margin, and that's going to tell me what's going to be left at the end of the month of January. Then I would plug in your debt. And this is why I asked you if you have any debt. So if you have minimum debt payments, maybe you have an SBA loan or you have credit cards you're wanting to pay off or a family loan, put those payments in as well. And then that will calculate for you. Okay, so we have 18,000 in cash. That has to cover our debt for the month. So then at the end of that, what is left over? So we'll do a little calculation here. This minus this. So then that would tell us at the end of the month, we have $15,000 in cash. We want to take a large portion of that then and save it. It's going to go into a savings account. So, you had mentioned like, you need to save, but like, how do you save and how do you have enough to save? Well, we want to plan to exceed what we need in total top line revenue in the good months so that it will cover our operating for that month, our debt for that month, and give us enough extra to save for the slow months. So if we pulled, let's say we had 15,000 in extra cash flow in our good months, and we could pull 20 or 30% of that, put it aside in a high yield savings. So until that month of, June, July, August, when it gets super slow, we're actually making a little bit of money even on that money. And then we will know because we put in our fixed and non-fixed expenses for the slow months as well. So we made our budget for the months of May, June, July, August, whatever. We know what that minimum amount is to run the business. We know how much debt we're still going to have. It will tell us on the bottom of our spreadsheet or at the bottom of our, paper and pen, whatever, however we're doing this ledger, how much we need to operate the business, knowing that this month is going to be a lot slower. So let's put in, let's say our sales are 15,000 for this month instead of, whatever it was, 50,000. And we still have excess amounts that we have to spend to run the business. So it's going to leave us with a lot less profit. And we still have these big debt payments. So we're going to put those over here. Put those over here just so we can calculate. So you can see we would be short. So if we typically make 15,000 in June, we still have these expenses to run. We still have our debt. We're going to be short 1,000. Then we want to be saving at least that amount from the good months to cover. So that's how I would plan. Does that make sense? Any questions or clarifying questions on that?
Where do I get this worksheet?
Yes. Where do you get the worksheet? I love it. So I'll actually email you at the end of today in my Profit Accelerator Level 1 program. We will help you put this together for your business.
Okay.
And then my clients, I teach them how to use this. And then every year you'll be like so equipped to just do it on your own. Come November,
Okay.
December, it's like, I'm going to plan out my next year. I'm going to decide how much I'm going to make in sales, how much I'm actually going to spend, what I need to save. And it just leaves you feeling so much more confident that you actually have a plan instead of like, oh geez, I don't know, should I save, should I not? Or what happens too in those great months is we get super excited because a lot of cash came in and then we overspend and we don't have
Yeah.
enough to save. So with, a budget like this, then it's like I can plan with purpose and it gives you permission to spend. You're like, nope, I planned with purpose. I know I'm saving enough so I can take my team out to coffee or I can upgrade, the booth in my salon or, whatever you want to do because you do or you don't have that cash.
Right.
I love it. And then I know you had one more question about just what do you do if you're not financially savvy? Where do you start? Do you want to kind of dive into that with me for a minute?
Yeah. So, I mean, in a nutshell, I just grew up in a family where financial literacy like was not a thing, my parents ran up debt and that was just that. So I never really learned. I'm trying to teach myself now. I'm noticing your books in the background and I have a lot of them. So
Yep.
I'm trying to teach myself now. And I guess I'm just, like I said, I got a bookkeeper who's trying to get all my finances together because I was trying to do it myself and I was just finally like, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm probably costing myself a lot of money. So I
Yeah.
invested in a bookkeeper and a CPA. But I guess where do you start? I mean, if you're just somebody that's not financially very savvy.
Yeah, I love that. Well, first of all, I'm super proud of you for even asking that question. I mean, I will tell you, I work with hundreds of small business owners, and most people aren't aware that they don't know what to do with money, or they know they are, but they don't even try to start. So you are like taking such awesome steps. Like, I'm so proud of you getting a
Oh, thank you.
bookkeeper. Yeah, knowing that you need to make a change and that this is a business. It's not just a hobby and you want to get paid for your time and you want to be smart with your money. So that's the first step. I think if you really say like, hey, I just don't know what numbers to concentrate on, what's even important, where do I start? I like to always start with three main buckets. So you have your sales bucket, and then you have your cost of goods sold bucket, which is going to be the product that actually sells. And if you have services, the direct cost of those sales. So let's say you have some contractors that do some esthetician work for you. You pay them, as contractors without their knowledge, expertise, and like work, you wouldn't have the sale. So I would directly cost that as well. So you're going to have the bucket of sales, the bucket of cost of goods sold, and then you're just going to have your expense bucket. And if you can just start to dive into like how those work together. So in that spreadsheet I showed you, it really follows a profit and loss statement. And a lot of times as owners, we just focus on the sales. Yours is like, I just need to make money because if I make more money, then I'll just be fine. But then we make more money and we're like, where did it go? I'm making more money, but I still don't have any. And it's because we're not focused on the margin. So, like, what is the true cost to make the sales? What
Yeah.
does the product truly cost me? Am I marking it accurately? Am I pricing my services properly? And then what am I really spending to operate my business? So a good exercise for you as you're starting to dive into like the numbers and the finances is just, it's very painful, but it's like a food diary. I would literally write down everything you spend for a month.
Okay.
Like just throw
Okay.
it in an Excel spreadsheet or put it in a journal. Like I went to Starbucks, it was $5.29. Write it down. Like I bought extra supplies. I bought tape this month. Like every little thing. Because just like when we go to Target and we get to the register and we're like, whoa,
Yeah.
I didn't, how did this total $400? Our businesses are like that too, like that $5, $10, $50 here, apps that cost X amount, it adds up so fast. And so we
Yeah.
want to control that bucket as well. So for
Okay.
someone that's saying like, hey, I want to get control of my finances, but no one's really ever taught me, what do I start with? I would start with that. Know how much you have to make in sales to truly cover your debt. Know what your cost of sales actually is, and then really understand what it costs to run your business. If you start to focus on those things, so many other doors will open up for you when it comes to like just building that confidence. And then the last thing I would say, I always tell my clients, find one number that you're going to fall in love with. So we don't have to love the numbers, we don't have to be bookkeepers, but just find one. So when we fall in love, we want to know everything about that person. We want to just be like well versed in like who they are and everything. Same thing with our number. So just pick one. Say, you know what, for the next 3 months, I'm going to learn everything I can about margin. Everything I can. I'm going to know my margin. I'm going to understand how margin works, or I'm going to really understand everything I can about how to make a set a sales goal. So pick one number and just focus on like really getting to know it, because that too will just open up what's really going on in the business for you.
Cool.
Yeah, good job. Keep it
Thank
up, and I'm
you.
excited to keep working with you too.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. All right, Rebecca, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to dive into your question. You have a great question for me, so let's talk. What's on your mind?
Thanks. So, I have HBM and Co, which is a gift box and customized gifting brand. And we do a lot of personalized things. I'm really diving into the gift box side right now, which comes with a whole set of money things that I did not anticipate. But really, my question is, and I don't think I did a good job of putting it on paper, but I'm trying to figure out, we've got ourselves into some debt already, trying to figure out the direction we wanted to go and buying lots of different things to try. And so I'm trying to set a budget for 2025. We had some really good success in this, we've had good success with Halloween and we're coming into Q4, but I've set my numbers terribly. I had no idea what I was doing with like profit and everything. And I'm finally starting to like figure that out, but I feel kind of like stuck with where we are now because I don't feel like I have a lot of time to change as far as like where I'm sourcing products from for Christmas and things like that. So it feels kind of overwhelming because I feel like I'm just digging myself deeper into the hole
Yeah.
when I do have sales. So I'm trying to be really good about setting a good plan for 2025, but I don't know how to get a good handle on it when I have no idea. Like, this is our first year of business, so I don't have any history. So it's hard for me to like take my averages for every month and, say I'm going to project my slow months or even my high months because I don't know those right now.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get a good plan for paying off debt, fixing my poor profits and bringing those up and increasing my margin, and kind of trying to plan that out for next year.
Yeah, so good. Okay, I'm gonna pull up my spreadsheet again because this, I
Okay.
think it's just nice to have a visual. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna show you how I would work on this problem in your business. So I had a subscription box as well. Back in 2018, I launched it, built that and grew it and sold it. And one thing that was really important to me with the subscription box model is to know not just the cost of what's in the box, but to truly know the cost to sell that box. So I knew, okay, product, it can't be more than X amount that I spend on the product in the box. The box itself cost me $1.25. I don't remember, I'm making up. But
Yeah.
like the sticker was 10 cents, the tissue was 5 cents. I knew everything. So I knew in order to sell a box for, let's say, $60 and have a 50% margin, all in, not that box, everything included in that box couldn't cost more than $30. Plus there was going to be shipping. So with the shipping piece of it, I took 1 to 2 months, 30 to 60 days of data because you don't know, like you said, when you start, you don't have anything. But I had shipped a
Yeah.
couple. And so I took the average of what shipping was costing me. And I said, okay, on average across all the boxes I shipped for the last 60 days, let's say, my cost to ship was $10.65. That means if I want a 50% margin, I can't have product that costs more than X amount. My supplies for the box can't cost X more than X amount because I have to also factor in the shipping. And all in for a $60 box, I want to be at $30. And that helped me figure out what I could pay for the products in the box, what I could pay for the supplies, etc. So that's where I would start with you, is to truly understand what the cost of that box is and to know what margin you need. Then the second step would be to figure out how many of those you have to sell to pay. It's similar to the exercise we just did with the previous caller, like how much it costs to run the business. So how many of those boxes do I need to sell to cover everything? So we're just going to leave in, we're going to say this is January 2025. I'll just leave these expenses in. So we put together that it costs $6,345 in fixed and non-fixed expenses to run the business for a month. This does not cover inventory and it doesn't cover any debt. So this total expense is only going to be opening the doors, turning the lights on, paying my people, etc. So we decided it costs $6,300 essentially to run the business. Then I would jump over and do an exercise like this. So we're going to say, okay, I'm going to say my box is $60. That's what I sell it for. If I sell 100 of them, I would make 6 grand. Let's pop back over here. Is that enough? $6,000 at a 50% margin? It's not. So it's leaving me in a deficit. So then I would go back to the drawing board and saying, okay, can I sell 150 boxes and cover it? So $60 times 150 would be 9,000. I'm still in the hole and I have debt to cover. So I got to do 200 boxes. And you start to play around with the actual amount of units you have to sell to cover. So $60 at 200 boxes sold would give me 12,000 in revenue, 50% margin. I could cover all of my operating for the month, but it wouldn't quite leave me enough. It only leaves me $791, and I have to cover, in this example, $3,000 basically in debt. So you just keep going back to the drawing board. The next thing that you would do is maybe you'd say, okay, I know I can't sell more than 200. Like, my business is new. I only sold 50. It's not realistic to say I'm going to go from 50 sales to 200. So what else could I do to give me enough? So we have 3 levers we can always pull. We can pull the sales lever, which is to increase our sales. We can pull the margin lever, which is to increase the margin, which gives us more to operate with. Or we can pull the expense lever, which is essentially to decrease. So I'm going to say I can't sell more than 200. That's the max, that's realistic. So the next thing I'm going to do is, what if I could change my margin? What if I could get a little bit smarter with either how I price the box or what it costs to put in the box? So I'm going to say I can get a little bit smarter and not put such expensive product in the box, or maybe I can buy it in bulk, and I could get my margin up to 60% instead of 50. That means that $12,000 in sales no longer cost me $6,000. It only cost me $4,800. So now I have $7,200 to cover my operating. So then I look down at the bottom and say, okay, wow, selling the same amount of boxes, not cutting any expenses, but just getting a little bit more margin, I can just about cash flow enough to cover my debt. So I'm going to go back and say, okay, I can't push that anymore. That's the max I can push my margin. What could I cut in expenses? Well, maybe I don't need to do quite as much marketing. What if I said I'm going to do 1,500 instead of 2,500? Okay, look at that. Just cutting my marketing by $1,000 leaves me with almost $3,000 in net profit, which covers my debt, gets me a paycheck. So that's how you would work out your business. So first, figuring out like what it truly costs you to sell a box. And then you'd figure out how many boxes you need to sell to cover the expenses of the business. And if that isn't where you want it to be, you start pulling those levers. Can I sell more boxes? Can I decrease the cost of them? Can I decrease the operating expense? Until you have mapped out a plan that says, this is what I have to sell. I can't spend any more than this in my business. This is the margin I have to bring in. This will cover my debt and write me a paycheck. And then you suddenly have a plan that you can go to work with. Thoughts or
Perfect.
questions
I
on
do
that?
have a question.
Yeah.
In your spreadsheet, you have debt down below after. So maybe that's something that I'm doing incorrectly too right now, is I'm grouping my like minimum payments and things for my credit cards and what I'm paying every month towards them as a business expense. Do you keep those separated?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So when you look at financials, there's 2 pieces in the financial set. So there's the profit and loss, and there's the balance sheet. And a profit and loss is always like going to look in the rearview mirror, what happened in the business. A profit and loss just shows you sales, cost of the sales, and what it costs to operate the business, and then what's left over, that's your profit. The balance sheet is where you see debt. So debt payments never show up on a profit and loss. And so that's why when we create a budget, we don't want to put the debt into the expense side of things because it's not an expense. The interest of it is an expense. So interest would be an expense. But I like to, for my clients, when we start out, like not get things too complicated. So I just group together the interest and the payment, like what are you paying in total? We want the profit of the business to cover and service the debt. So I'm guessing that is
Okay.
part of your problem because it's very, very common where we're like, okay, on paper, my business is making money. Now I owe taxes, but there's not money in the bank account. Like, so where's the
Yeah.
disconnect? It's because we're servicing debt and debt's not going to show up on the P&L. So we always want the debt to come out of the profit so that we're driving enough profit to service the debt. And what's exciting about that is then once we pay the debt off, we're so used to building that profit that we start to build a lot of profit and keep it. And so we just build the profit to service the debt. We use that to pay off the debt. When the debt's gone, now we're in the habit of building profit and like our goals around profit. And now we have extra money that we can start funding things with. We can pay ourselves more. And it gets pretty exciting. It's kind of that snowball effect.
Perfect. And then when you're for like my 200 number, would you kind of just base that off of like, could I use a little bit of an average of what I have been selling mixed with like what I feel comfortable that I could easily achieve?
Yeah, a bit of that. So there's a bit of, what have you done? So if you've only sold 10, we're not going to say next month you're going to sell 200. But
Right.
on the flip side of that, we also have to be realistic with like, what do you actually have to sell? So people will say, well, I haven't done that. I haven't made 10,000 in my business. So how can I just say I'm going to make 10,000? Well, if 10,000 is what we need to actually make money and not go into more debt, we have to make it. So there's a bit of like, okay, let's look at what we've done in the past and let's ramp up, with a little bit of realism, right? But then also, if that's what we have to sell to make the business make sense, and we've tried everything else, we've moved margin, we've cut out expenses, whatever we can, then we have to figure out a way to go out and get that done. 10x is better than 2x is a book that I'd recommend if you haven't listened to it. What we like to do in business is say, okay, well, last year I did 20,000. I really want to, do 30,000 this year. I'm going to push myself. And the premise of that book is instead of saying I did 20 and now I'm going to push it up to 30, what if we 10x? We thought about 10xing, like I did 20, I'm going to do 100 grand. Will we get to 100 grand? Probably not, but the activities that we'll take that will take place when we're pushing ourselves to like really stretch our goal will get us farther than if we just say like I sold 20, so I'm going to bump it up to 30. If we need 200 to cover the bills, we have to figure out how to work towards that 200. And you'll know, like there'll be months as you're working your way up where you won't sell them, but the activities you're going to do to push yourself to that big number is actually going to grow your business faster.
Yeah, it's kind of like the idea of doing a good, better, best goal.
Yes. Yeah. And then it's like, why wouldn't we go for the best goal, right?
Yeah.
Let's not settle just for the good. So I love it.
Okay, perfect. Well, that was very helpful and we're making strides in the right direction, so that's good.
I love it. Well, thanks for chatting. It was really fun to answer your question today.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey friend, thank you so much for tuning in today to the Inventory Genius podcast. If there's something that you heard today on the podcast episode and you want to dig deeper into becoming an inventory genius yourself, I want to invite you to head on over to my website, ciarastockeland.com, where I have multiple ways that you and I can work together on your inventory. I want to help you with your profit, your cash flow, and your paycheck, because at the end of the day, it's all related to your inventory. So head on over to the website, connect with me. I'll work with you soon. See you then.